In this video, we're going to be discussing information, and I have three objectives. The first is to identify credible and useful websites. The second is to discuss how to balance information consumption. And then the third is to review the self-reliance journey preparation template, which is a spreadsheet that I created in Google Sheets. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how to copy that template so that you can conduct your own inventory of your supplies and start to track your preparation efforts. Let's get started. Hi everybody, my name is Matt and this channel is dedicated to my efforts to become more self-reliant so that I can keep my friends and family healthy and safe during the pandemic. If this is of interest to you, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and notifications buttons so that you can be notified when I post new videos. And please leave any comments or questions or ideas of your own in the comment section below. Thank you. So this is a copy of the Self-Reliance Journey Preparation template. And really it's just a copy of a Google sheet that I created in an effort to track my own efforts when buying supplies and getting things in place in case of any kind of telework situation or K-12 schools being canceled, which has now occurred, or a quarantine, which is likely at this stage. And this is also the genesis of this channel because I started to share this with friends and family who expressed interest in sharing more information. And so this video is going to cover in depth just the basic structure of this. And I've got it broken down into the categories that map to the categories that the website's going to cover, as well as the YouTube channel is going to cover. And the first tab is information. And one of the really difficult things I think about this entire situation is identifying credible and useful websites. There are a lot of websites out there. There's also a great deal of fear out there, and some would argue panic. And I would also say that this is not only a true crisis, but it's also being leveraged in various ways. In some ways not good ways. And so identifying credible websites, identifying websites that do not necessarily have an agenda beyond dissemination of facts is difficult. And so this is not a comprehensive list, but these are the websites that I trust, and these are the websites that are grounded in empiricism and seem to have a good grasp of what's taking place. And the first one is the CDC. And they actually published this document in 2017 in order to inform people how do you get your household ready for a pandemic flu. And so this is a great document to start with. And all of the links I'm going to provide in the information section of the video, and I also might put it in the first pinned comment of the video. And so, and it'll also be in that template that I'm going to provide. This is a great starting point in case you're not familiar with what you should be doing to get your house ready. The second one is more in depth, but again, it's a CDC site, planning guides and checklists. And one of the terms that the epidemiologists and the other doctors, they throw around the term of non-pharmaceutical interventions. And that's really what I think is taking place in the country as well as the globe, which is social distancing. This can take multiple forms, but the bottom line is it requires a significant amount of effort on individual citizens as well as the governments. And this is a really good website that goes through what people should be doing in various contexts, such as home, school, work, etc. So I highly recommend this. Again, credible website by the CDC. The next source of information that I use, and this is just what I find to be useful, and it certainly is not without its weaknesses or vulnerabilities. But I have found Dr. Chris Martinson's work actually quite useful. This is a gentleman who has his own website. I was not familiar with him at all until I started tracking coronavirus in China early January. And I've found his videos to be outstanding. They have been very accurate in terms of his predictions. It's been presented in what I consider to be a relatively non-emotional way, a very empirical way, and yet sobering, extremely sobering, and he's been very accurate in terms of his ability to predict as well as provide guidance on what we should be doing. And so some people definitely critique his work. I can only speak from my own experience of viewing his videos over the last month or so, and I've been very, very impressed. Another outstanding YouTube resource is Dr. John Campbell's channel, and he does a daily video. And he comes from he's a retired nurse, a retired educator out of the United Kingdom, has a deep level of expertise, and he's quite talented as a teacher because he's able to explain things in a very learned way, yet also in a very approachable and empathetic way. And I can't recommend his videos enough. The other source of information that I use is Twitter, which you have to be very careful of because, quite frankly, there are a lot of great sources of information on here and a lot of alarmist as well as just outright inaccurate information on here. But this particular thread is, I think, a credible source, and it really presents up-to-date statistical data on what's taking place across the globe. So I highly recommend B&O Newsroom, B&O Desk, and they update it multiple times an hour. So it's a very good way to keep in touch. Another data source that I use is John Hopkins' data visualization or dashboard, and this is grounded in multiple databases. It's kept up to date, and I find it to be extremely valuable. The other website that I use that correlates with this is the COVID-19info.live. I don't know who hosts this, but I have correlated it with the Hopkins data, and it seems to be quite accurate. The reason why I like it is it has just another layer of data that gets into more specifics, such as mortality rates across each country, which really helps for me to understand what models are emerging. And there seem to be two models emerging, the South Korean model and the Italian model, meaning how different governments and communities are reacting and adjusting to these outbreaks. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, and other countries seem to be doing an outstanding job with controlling the amount of deaths, even with relatively large outbreaks. Italy, I think, is struggling, and you see a significant difference in terms of the mortality rate between, let's say, Italy and South Korea. And I think that's important to track that because it informs where we could be going as a country. No matter what country you're in, it's important to look at who might be ahead of us by several weeks. The last resource that I'm going to share with you is really a book, and it's a book that I'm reading now. And it is quite sobering, but I think is probably the most in-depth historical account of the 1918 pandemic. Not to say that that is where we're headed. I simply don't know. But it is, I think history has a lot of lessons for us. And this particular book, The Great Influenza by John Barry, is one of the most respected books on the topic. And so that is another book that I am particularly reading that I find useful. But again, you have to caution against what you consume and how you consume it, because it is easy to get, quite frankly, quite scared. Along those lines, the second objective that I wanted to hit here is really balancing consumption. And I'm speaking strictly for myself and my own experience. But I have found that I'm prone to just consume media at long stretches at the exclusion of other more productive activities because of my anxiety around this issue. And I say that because I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of people struggle with that. When there's a crisis, you want to feel like you're up to date. My own recommendation that I'm having for myself, which my wife gave me actually, was to check in twice or at most 3 times a day, meaning morning, lunchtime, and evening, to see what the current status is. I do believe it's our responsibility to stay up to date and stay aware, but you can definitely, or I'll speak for myself, I definitely go too far in the sense of consuming too much of it from too many sources. And so the sources that I've shared with you here, I find to be useful, I find to be credible, and I check in 3 times a day. The third thing that I wanted to do in this video is to go through these categories very quickly. And you'll see at the bottom of the page, it's tabbed out information. What information are you going to use to inform your efforts? Water. How much water do you need on hand in order to stay at home for an extended period of time? The general metric is 1 gallon per person per day. That's a significant amount of water, so you want to think about that. The spreadsheet that I've created enables you to put in the number of containers you have, the capacity of each container, the burn rate per person, your family burn rate, and then the daily storage. And so that's very helpful in terms of knowing how much you have on hand. Food. Obviously, you need to have food at home. And depending upon your family and your nutritional needs, that will vary. But some of the most organized individuals in the United States are members of the Church of Latter-day Saints or Mormons, and they are a community that have thought deeply about long-term planning around food storage. And so I would strongly recommend looking at some of their resources because they have some of the most in-depth resources in that areas. Security and hunting. I know that for some folks this is a tricky area, but I'm a gun owner, and to paraphrase Jocko Willink, the firearm is an equalizer without parallel, and it's simply unmatched in its ability to eliminate an attacker regardless of size and strength. If a person truly needs self-protection in a high-threat area, there is no substitute for the firearm. And that's Lieutenant Commander Jocko Willink from his book, Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. He is a retired United States Navy SEAL, and he's got an outstanding podcast, and a man who all of us should respect deeply. But that phrase or quote speaks for itself. The other categories that I look at are communication and light. How are you going to talk to folks? How are you going to see? Cooking and food prep, that's another area you want to think about. Health and sanitation. This ranges from paper towels and bleach and face masks to toilet paper to some things that we all have to think about amongst our families. And that's an important category. Shelter and heat. How would you heat your house or keep it cool if you had to over long periods of time? And then I just have miscellaneous stuff in here, such as fuel for my chainsaw and things like that. So I'm going to make videos in the future that go in depth on each of these categories, but that gives you a brief overview of the things that I'm thinking about as I structure out my information and the organization of that information. I'm going to provide a link to this spreadsheet in the video comments as well as the video information. And to make a copy of this for your own use, all you have to do is come up to the upper left-hand corner, click on File, click on Make a Copy, and then what that will do is make a copy for you, which you can then edit if you have a Gmail account or a Google account or a YouTube account. And if you don't, I highly recommend you do, because it's a very easy way for people to exchange files across time and space. It's a cloud-based service provided by Google. It's very easy and it's free. And so thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.